Welcome. My name is Will Moss. I'm the CEO of HBCU Connect and wanted to introduce our speaker. But first, thank you all for joining. This is our first 10 a.m. session, and the topic is perfecting the art of interviewing. Our presenter will be Celeste Warren, Vice President, Global Diversity and Inclusion at Merck. Appreciate you all jumping in. Please stay on mute so we can focus in on our presenter. And we will have a live Q&A, but feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and I will ask those questions to our speaker once she finishes up her presentation. But if you have questions as you go, please use the chat. And then once we get to that live Q&A part of the event, you can use the raise hand feature to ask questions, and I'll call on you all to ask those questions. But thank you all for joining us for perfecting the art of interviewing. Let me present our speaker, Celeste Warren, Vice President, Global Diversity and Inclusion at Merck. So Celeste, if you're ready.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak to all of you. I am honored to be able to speak with all of you about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is helping all of us to be able to achieve whatever our career aspirations might be. And the first step in that is perfecting the art of interviewing. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. And so I'd like to talk to all of you about this, a subject that is near and dear to my heart. We'll talk about interviewing and how it works. You know, we'll talk about preparing before the interview, what you should do before. It isn't something that you just walk into, what to do and also not to do during the interview, and then following up after the interview. And then, as I said, I'd love to be able to just engage in a conversation, a dialogue with all of you, because that's the fun part of being able to talk with all of you. Okay, so let's talk about in person before the interview. So many companies have, especially since the pandemic, and to be more cost efficient and effective, have in-person interviews, but they also have virtual interviews. So I'm going to talk about both for all of you in case, depending on what type of interview that you would be taking part in. So the first thing is preparing for the interview. First, you need to prepare your resume. And you know, I know a lot of folks say, well, we don't use cover letters anymore, but sometimes you do. But you want to definitely make sure that you're preparing your resume. You want to make sure that it reflects who you are, the skills and the capabilities and the experiences that you have. And whether you're a new college graduate, post-college graduate school, or someone who is re-entering the workforce, what I call the boomerangers that took time off to do certain things, and now they're coming back into the workforce. It doesn't make a difference, whatever, but you want to make sure that you are preparing your resume and it reflects who you are as a potential candidate. You want to do your research on the organization. You want to make sure that you have looked at the organization, the nonprofit, the agency, the firm. You've looked and done your research, Googled it. You've gone on their website. You know, if you get a chance, you know, read through some of them have corporate responsibility reports or annual reports, 10Ks. Read whatever you can on the organization so you can when you go into the interview, you're well informed, and at the end, and I'll talk about this when we talk about what happens during the interview, at the end, you're able to ask intelligent questions of the interviewer when you are talking with them. Carefully examine the job or the internship description. The last thing you want to do is go into an interview and you are not sure, or it's not what you really thought you would want after you've talked with the individual or the interviewers. You want to make sure that you understand the description, you understand what it is that you're interviewing for, you understand the qualifications, you understand, you know, the experience that they're asking for, you understand all of these different things. Consider why you're interviewing and your qualifications. Why is this internship or this job something that you're interested in? And don't just be chasing a title or or something that you think is going to be fun. Make sure that you're grounded in your foundation around why you're interviewing, what your qualifications are, what you bring to the table, how you can be and can be perceived as the best candidate for the role. But that starts with grounding and centering in why are you even interviewing for this particular job, and being clear about that so you can articulate it very well in the interview. Perform research on the company, the role, the internship. I talked about that. Consider your answers to common interview questions. You should always consider common interview questions. There's usually between 5 to 10 questions that every interviewer is going to ask. And you should be able to answer those questions very clearly, very calmly, with a sense of personal, um, personality as well. So you don't want to memorize the answers, but you need to know, hey, these are the common questions that they ask, and be clear and be comfortable with answering them. Practice your speaking voice and your body language. You want to make sure that your body language clearly reflects who you are as an individual. You don't want to be slouching. You don't want to be, not giving eye contact, all of that. But you want to practice your voice, and you want to make sure your voice is such that you're relaying confidence, not screaming and hollering, but also not speaking in such a quiet voice that they can't hear you. But you're speaking with a level of confidence, and your body language also conveys that confidence as well. Confidence in yourself, that you are someone who is confident in themselves, and you know that you should be sitting in that chair interviewing for that role. Prepare several thoughtful questions for the interviewers, because they always ask you at the end, do you have any questions for me? You should be able to say, yes, I have a few questions based on the research that you've done on the organization. And I can't say this enough: practice, 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 practice. Always practice. Practice with friends, practice with your teachers and professors, practice with career guidance counselors, practice with your parents, practice with colleagues, but practice. Because the more you practice, the better you're going to be. And then dress for success, whatever that may be. And so in this time and age, it's not the way it was years ago, where you have to always wear the interview suit, and and from that perspective. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Now, if it's a virtual interview, you want to prepare in advance, and make sure you check your internet, you check your microphones, you check your cameras, you make sure that you turn off other iPhones, tablets, laptops, etc., that may slow down the connection in whatever room you're in. You want to make sure that you're in a quiet place to conduct the interview. You want to make sure that you're not in a place where there's going to be a lot of traffic. Um, and it's going to be quiet. There's not going to be interruptions. You're not going to be constantly saying, oh, just a minute, just a minute, just a minute. You want to make sure that you're able to just be able to focus on the interview, and limit distractions. You want to leverage a virtual background if you need to. If you're in a place that the background is a little bit messy or a little bit too much, well, you might want to just get a nice, clean, professional background that you're going to use. There's a bunch of them on Zoom that you can use that show an office setting or something, that's very professional is what you want to use. Click the link, show up on time, a little bit early, make sure that everything's working, make sure that it works very, very well, and you don't have any problems from that perspective. Also, even though it's remote, you still want to dress for success. You still want to look professional. And I don't mean just your top. I mean your pants. I mean everything. Your shoes. You want to dress just as if you were going to be in person. The reason why is because you never know what's going to happen. You may have to stand up for something. Something may happen. You just never know. And the last thing you want to do is stand up. You got a nice professional shirt or blouse on, and you stand up and you got sweatpants on or pajama pants. You don't want that to happen. And think about your background. Like I said, if you're not going to use a virtual background, make sure that what's behind you is not busy and it's not distracting from you, the person who is interviewing. And don't rely on a cheat sheet. Just because it's virtual, you don't want to have a cheat sheet that is down in front of you, because you're going to be looking down on it and it's very clear that you're looking down and not making eye contact with the audience, with the people that you're interviewing with. They're going to see that you're looking down. They're going to notice that you're reading from something. You need to make sure that you practice enough where you can do the interview just as if you were in person. So dressing for success. It used to be that, you make sure that you look like what's in the first column there, that you have a suit on, that you look, you know, you're dressed to the nines, that you're buttoned down, you look very formal. But in this day and age, different companies and different organizations and different nonprofits and different agencies and firms, they have different dress codes. And so you have to kind of get the lay of the land for the type of organization that you are interviewing with. So there's business formal, which is more the suit and tie. For some folks, the suit, the heels. For women, there's business casual, there's smart casual, and then there's casual. And so depending on, the internship or the job that you're interviewing for, you sort of play it by understanding. Now do your research. You might want to understand the kind of the dress code. What is the culture of the company that you're interviewing for, and dress up. So if the company is casual, you might want to dress up in smart casual or business casual. If the company is business casual, you might want to dress in business or even business formal. But it just depends on where you're interviewing. If it's something that is a completely casual organization, I would say still come in smart casual. So here are some of the top interview questions. I mentioned earlier that there's always interview questions that you should always be prepared for. Most interviewers ask some of the same questions. Tell me about yourself. Why should I hire you? What are your greatest strengths or weaknesses? Why did you leave, or why do you want to leave your current job? Or if you're a student, why are you interested in this school? If you're trying to get a scholarship or you're trying to get an internship or a fellowship, why are you interested in it? What are your goals for the future? Why do you want this job, or change in the same categories, whether that be in, school, you're interviewing for a school or a scholarship or internship or fellowship. Why do you want it? How do you handle stress and pressure? That's something that I use a lot when I am interviewing potential candidates. And then describe a difficult situation or project and how you overcame it. That's something that really demonstrates how you operate in times of difficult situations and what you do to overcome it, how you meet and get around those obstacles or challenges. Now, what you want to do throughout the interview, if it's in person, stay positive throughout. You want to have a positive conversation. That's key to successful job interviewers. Nobody wants to hear a litany of excuses or bad feelings or negative experiences, even when they may be legitimate. But you don't want to hear a whole bunch about that. If it was an experience and you get that question that I talked about in the previous slide about how you overcame a situation, you talk about it still in a way that says, here's what the situation was, here's what I did to overcome it, and here's what the outcome was. But you don't want to harp on a whole bunch of negative things, and because it just sends a bad message to the interviewer. Watch your body language. What you say, what you don't say is just as important as what you do say in interviews. So understanding and maximizing the nonverbals, smiling, eye contact, handshake, posture, all of that is going to help you succeed in the interview. Be authentic. Be your true self. Speak clearly and enthusiastically about your experiences and skills. You experienced it. These were some of your skills. Be proud of what you've done and your accomplishments. Be professional, but let your personality shine through the interview process. Employers tend to hire people where there's a connection. They've established a connection with the person. So do that. And also don't be afraid of short pauses. Short pauses are okay. They're fine. If the interviewer is looking at something or thinking about your next question, or they're looking at their notes or their interview guides, don't feel like you have to fill that pause. Just wait for the interviewer and they will come back with another question. And sometimes you may need a few minutes to formulate answer a question. That's fine. You don't want to take too long, but you want to think through and make sure that they understand that you're thinking through the question. You might say something like, that's a very interesting question. Let me see. And then talk about, give your answer. Seal the deal. In sales, they say close the bag. When both sides are done with the questions and the interview winds down, you thank the interviewer for their time, or interviewers for their time. You ask them when you can expect to hear from them. That's okay to ask them what the next steps are in the process, and then what's the best way to follow up with them. In a virtual interview, you stay positive throughout. You still watch your body language. Even though they can see you from here to here, you still want to make sure that your body language, your eye contact with the camera lens, with your hand gestures, not distracting, but are real and authentic. And your hands aren't, flying all over the place, but they're real and they accentuate what you're saying. You want to be authentic. You want to make eye contact with the camera lens. You want to stay focused and visibly engaged. And remember to stay responsive after you say goodbye. A lot of times when we're interviewing, and if it's a panel interview, you're going to see all 3, 4, or 5 people on the screen at the same time. And it's so very tempting to look at each person as you're talking to them. And, we all do that. We all do that because we want to maintain what we think is virtual eye contact. Well, virtual eye contact is looking at the camera lens. When you look at the camera lens, you're making eye contact with all of the interviewers if it's a panel interview. And sometimes it can be very hard, but you want to try to do that, especially when you're talking with them. Now, if they're talking to you and you want to look at them and you want to make sure that you understand their body language and how they may be asking the question, because their body language is just as important as the question and the words that they're saying. So you want to look at them at that point. But when you're talking and when you're addressing the interviewers, you want to look at the camera. Now, the same rules apply in panel interviews as in one-on-ones. You maintain eye contact with the individual, the eye contact with the camera. Don't remind an interview that his colleague already asked that question. You do not need to do that. That is not a good thing to do. That person may have been thinking about something else. They may have been distracted. Whatever the reason, it's not your role to point out that they may have been distracted and missed the question of the other interviewer. You just basically answer the question again. You don't say, as your colleague just asked, and has I just answered. You don't start it with that. You just answer the question. And you might want to elaborate more or give a different example to to say the same thing. Watch your nonverbals. As I said, speak with confidence. It's even more important when you're doing a virtual interview that you speak with confidence because you have this screen. They're not looking at your whole body, but you have a short amount of screen to be able to project who you are. So you want to speak with confidence and you want to stay positive. And again, be your authentic self. Now, what not to do during the interview? I've talked about some things that you should do. Now let's talk about what you should not do. Don't be clueless about the company. You should absolutely have done your research. You know about the company. You've Googled them online. You've looked at their websites. You've looked at their annual reports if you can. You've looked at their corporate responsibility reports to know kind of what they do, even from a philanthropic standpoint. You know what their ideas and their values are as an organization. So don't be clueless about the company. Don't be late, whether it's an in-person interview or a virtual interview. Do not be late. That's almost rule number one. Do not be late. Be ready to log in a little bit earlier. Be ready to leave wherever you're coming from, your apartment, your house, your complex, wherever it is, leave early so you can get there. If you can, a couple days or 3 days before the interview, drive to where it might be. If it's local, drive to where it might be so you already know how to get there. Google what it might be what the traffic might be at the time that you are leaving the job, leaving for the interview. Because if you're leaving during traffic hour, you can add, depending on the city or the town that you're in, you can add a half hour to almost even an hour to it, depending on what rush hour traffic looks like. If it's in midday, traffic might be a little bit better, but do the research because you do not want to be late. Don't trash a previous employer, a college professor, a colleague, coworkers, student colleagues. Don't trash anyone in the interview, no matter how badly they treated you, no matter what the circumstance was, no matter how bad of a boss they were, no matter how bad of a professor that they were. Do not trash the previous employer. Not a good thing to do. Again, you talk about the situation objectively. You talk about it from the standpoint of what you learn, because even when you have bad professors and bad bosses, I've had plenty of them, but I also learn from them as well, because you learn something from everybody if you're paying attention and you're also have a learning mindset. Don't lack enthusiasm. Don't sit there like, oh, don't be slumping and just not have a lot of energy. You want to be standing, sitting up straight. Again, you're using hand gestures appropriately. You're smiling. You're letting yourself come across who you are. You want to have enthusiasm because you're excited about the opportunity to be a part of this organization, to be considered and accepted into this college or university, to get this internship or this fellowship. You're excited about it. So be able to show enthusiasm. Now, you don't want to act like you've had 5 billion cups of coffee either. You want to make sure that you're showing enthusiasm, being professional, but you're letting your personality come through as well. Forget to ask questions. At the end of the interview, when the interviewer inevitably says, well, I've talked a lot. What questions do you have of us or of me? Don't say, well, I don't really have anything. Wrong answer. If you're in person, if you have a piece of paper or a notebook or a little notepad, you might want to open it up and say, you know what? I had a chance to do some research on your organization, and I did have a few questions, if you don't mind, and then start asking questions. Very good questions that talk about the company, as I said, their philosophy, maybe their business, at some decisions that they've made, maybe a recent article that was published about a recent acquisition or something like that, depending on what your discipline is or the type of job that you're interviewing. You know, if it's a nonprofit, you might want to talk about some grants that they've just recently received or the current environment, you know, depending on what it is. But you want to ask interesting questions that the interviewer or ers want to talk about. It's something that they're proud about and shows interest in not just the organization, but maybe even about their department or their division or their part of the organization. But you want to ask a question. You never want to say, nope, I don't have any questions. And then the last thing is don't talk too much. If there's a pause, if the interviewers are looking at their interview guides and they're trying to find a specific question or something happens, just sit there and be patient and wait for the next question. You don't need to fill the air with needless um, jabber. You want to basically just sit back and be relaxed because you are confident in who you are and what you have to say, and you don't need to talk too much. Secondly, you don't want to if the I've interviewed candidates and I ask one question and 15 minutes later they're still talking. That is something that you don't want to do either. Most interviews, if it's a 30-minute, 45-minute interview or hour interview, they have at least 8 questions that they're going to ask. You want to make sure that they can get through all of those questions. You want to make sure that you answer very thoroughly, but succinctly as well. Not too succinctly, but thoroughly. And so you don't want to just talk too much where 15 minutes later, you're still on the first question. Okay? Now, after the interview, as soon as possible after the interview, take the time to write down the names and the titles of all the interviewers, your impressions, you know, just notes. You're just debriefing yourself. When you leave the interview and you're in your car or you're on the train or bus or whatever on your way back to your place, just take some notes about the interview. But you definitely want to capture, if you can, the names of the people who interviewed you so you can send a nice little short, brief thank you note saying that, you know, you thank them for taking the time to interview them because it shows your interest in the company, it shows your sincerity and your attention to detail too. You know, and a little known fact, but not a lot of job seekers bother to even send a thank you letter, which is interesting. But doing so could make the difference in making you stand out as a candidate. So remember to do that too. So I'm going to open it up right now because I want to make sure that that we have time for questions. And I want to thank all of you for the opportunity. And let's open it up for questions. I want to talk to you about also a nonprofit that I have with my son and my daughter. One is in University of Miami as a graduate student on her way to vet school, and my other is a senior getting ready to graduate from Arcadia University on his way to graduate school. And we have a nonprofit where we provide resources and scholarships and other types of programs to students of color that are pursuing STEM related fields. So if you like more information, we're in the process now of our application process. So if you like more information, feel free to reach out, and here's the information just with the QR code as well. So with that, Will, I'll turn it over to you, and let's open it up for questions.
Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes for Q&A, but I like to ask the first question for context.
Uh-huh.
I think it's awesome. I wanted to thank you for leading this session and taking the time out to speak to everyone. But we've got about 300, almost 350 people on right now. So I think this is a great opportunity for you maybe to share your background and your story and kind of what you do at Merck, so that folks just have context of who they're hearing from if they kind of jumped on a little bit late.
Sure, sure. I can't believe, wow, congratulations on such a successful conference too, Will. Well, I am let me call it emeritus, Global Diversity and Inclusion Chief Diversity Officer at Merck. And I say emeritus is because I recently announced my retirement in March last month and named my successor, who has taken over. And I'm going to be retiring in July and moving on to the next, as they say, the next leg of my life's journey and career journey, and doing some things um, afterwards, really focused on diversity and inclusion. And so I started at this company 28, older than some of you, years ago. And I started in human resources. I was a human resources business partner with another company first, Kraft General Foods, in the food industry. So I did that for several years and then came over to Merck and in the pharmaceutical industry, and basically was in human resources for our sales and marketing division. I also was in our manufacturing division and also in our research division and our vaccines division as well, and also did a little time in animal health. And so have had a chance to really just see the whole organization. And then 10 years ago, I was asked by our then CEO, Ken Frazier, to take over the helm with our Global Diversity and Inclusion Center of Excellence. And if any of you know anything about Ken Frazier, you do not say no to the man. And so I took on the challenge, and the rest, as they say, of history. I've been doing this job for 10 years through ups and downs, through a pandemic, through the murder of George Floyd, through Trayvon Martin, through all all kinds of different things to where we are right now as well. And so it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey, and I've learned a lot, and I'm going to be taking this on into my next leg of my career.
Awesome. So thank you for that context and that background. So I'm going to start grabbing some of the folks that have their hand raised to allow them to come off of mute and ask their question in the order that they raise their hand. So Marlissa Scott, if you'd like to go ahead and come off of mute and ask your question. Whoops, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I had one question. Hey, everybody. Thank you for
Hi,
your
Marlisa.
presentation.
How are you?
Good, how are you? So my question is, I'm a computer engineer, and a lot of times, because I was a recent grad, and especially in my beginning of interviewing, they would ask me a question that I didn't know the answer to, right?
Mhm.
It was very specific to the role, even though I did do my due diligence on that company and the role, reading the job description. The it was very specific question. So how would you answer that if it's a very specific question and you don't know the role? I did it in a way like, okay, well, I'm ready to learn more, but what would be a very professional answer?
Marlisa, you hit it on the head because you can't always know everything in an interview, even though you've done your research, as you said. But I think what I have seen that has worked really, really well as an interviewer, and then also as someone who is interviewed for different roles, um, I would just be very blunt and very clear and very transparent too, because you don't want to bluff it. It isn't a
Hmm.
time where you fake it till you make it. It's just not. You basically say exactly what you said. I'm not really sure I have that level of expertise, but I am willing to learn, and then give an example of a role or an assignment or a project that you have gone into where you didn't have a lot of background and experience, and how you learn, how you made sure that you talked to people, that you read what you could, whatever you could get your hands on, talk to different people. And then not only were you able to complete the assignment, but able to complete it in such a fashion that it was the outcome was very, very successful, something like that.
Okay, well, thank you. That example at the end probably would have hit it over the nail. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Sure. Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Yep.
meet you as well.
Thank you for the question. And I'm going to go ahead and call the next person in line is Nylan Sitafall. So Nylan.
Hello, Miss Warren. Can everybody hear me well?
Yes. Hi, Nylan.
Hello, hello. I hope everybody's doing well. First, I want to say thank you so much for the presentation. I really enjoyed and took down copious amount of some notes, and I can't wait for my next interview. Second, Nylan Sidafal, pleasure to meet everybody. Graduate of North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. Computer science major and master 2020 and 2022. And my question is, I wanted to hear about your methodology when it comes to using volunteer experiences to help establish that connection between a potential employer or someone that you would just like to talk to. Currently, I'm doing a Make-A-Wish hike in June, 28 miles pretty much in a day, all for the benefit of Make-A-Wish. And yeah, I would love to hear your methodology on how you would use that type of opportunity to help bridge the gap and to make that connection with someone.
Well, Nylan, that's an excellent question. And I talked earlier about experience, skills, capabilities, and a lot of people get experience, skills, and capabilities, not just from a 9 to 5, but from nonprofits, volunteering, um, things they do in their church, in their community. That's still skills, capability development, and experience that you're developing. So it doesn't make a difference whether it's with a 9 to 5 paid job or something that you're doing is from a volunteer basis. In fact, I recommend to a lot of students who are coming out of school or are still in school that if they weren't able to get an internship over the summer, do volunteer work, because there are so many nonprofits, mine included. We need volunteers, and we will put you to work. We will definitely put you to work, and you will learn skills, you will learn capabilities, you will get valued experiences. So no, that is perfect. Perfect. Never leave an opportunity lost. And so, do the volunteer work, because you're still turning that into resume fillers.
Thank you for the question, Nyla.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So I see we have about 6 or 7 more people that have questions. So my ask to everyone that's asking a question, if you could just kind of rapid fire ask your question as quick as possible so that Celeste can go answer as many questions as possible with the time we have remaining. Okay, Rob. So if you have a question.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for the presentation, Ms. Warren and Will. Very informative. I enjoyed it. It gave me a little rude awakening. The part that took my attention was the part that you were saying about the in-person and the virtual interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the practice of looking at different people, and you were saying that you just center the eyes to the lens and do the interview part, because that's what I did. I was accustomed to doing that, where I'm looking at all the different people. If it's a group interview, I'm looking at each and every one of them just to engage. But I really appreciate that. And then
Mm-hmm.
lastly, I want to give kudos to Will. Um, I had a I had a situation with regards to what you had brought up, Miss Warren, about the resume writing. And
Uh-huh.
I told Will, I said, hey, I need to find out a way to brush up or revamp my resume and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Will told me that he didn't really have anybody in place to actually help work on my resume, but he gave me this template. It's a very nice template, and it was like an AI generated type template to help your
Mm-hmm.
resume, and it made a big difference with my resume. I'm actually getting a lot of companies that are reaching out to me from that point on.
Excellent, Rob. I was going to say, in this day and age with Chat GPT, you can do a very, very nice resume, very nice cover letter if they require one. Um, and also those questions that I said that most 99% of interviewers ask, you can also put that in AI in chat and say, what would you give as an interview for these questions, and they can help you as well. AI, I love Chat GPT. Now I know there are a lot of professors and folks that say they're watching out for that as papers and all of that, but for things like this, it really does enhance your experience and helps you to think more broadly too. So Rob, excellent
Thank you.
advice.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. And about that, I'll add one caveat. You use ChatGPT, use it to help you get structure and use it to help clean up what you've come up with, but don't use it to just verbatim
Yes.
do the writing for you and then spit it out because it can be recognized. So you want to make sure stuff is in your voice and includes your ideas. But yeah, ChatGPT is great for like, it can review your resume, it can reformat it for you, but you want it to have your own voice.
Yep.
Okay, so next question, Bernice, if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, thank you so much for this. My question is, what do you think is the most important transferable skills to have when like going into an interview?
I would say a couple, regardless of what you're interviewing for or the discipline, if good communications, written and verbal, very important. Because you want to be able to articulate whatever it is that you're working on in a way where people understand it, and also that you can sell it and influence and be able to get your point across. The second thing, no matter what discipline, is project management, being able to manage large scale projects, being able to collaborate well, because that shows different skill sets: collaboration, results orientation, business savvy, communication, as I said. But a project manager is a skill set that, regardless of the discipline, regardless of the type of job, that everyone should have. And then the last thing I think in this day and age is data analytics. And I'm not talking your IT discipline, but being able to take data, take information, distill it down to what's important, and be able to reflect that into whatever it is that you're working on. Those are the three things. Thank you, Bernice. Excellent question.
Yeah, awesome question. Okay, so we've got just a little bit of time left, so we're gonna try to do rapid fire with the next questions. Tasia Smith.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for the information. I would love to know interviewing after being fired.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to tell people you were fired, because let me tell you something, but it's required that when someone's doing a background check, well, first of all, you may not want to use that company as a reference, or those people as a reference, or your boss as a reference. So that's one thing. But as they're doing background checks, most companies do background checks. If they don't do it themselves, the recruiters, they hire a third party group to do it. But the company is supposed to give only two things. They're supposed to verify the date you were hired and the date that you left the organization. They are not supposed to give any other information. That is something that they're not allowed to do. And so you want to put the company on there, because you don't want to break in your resume as far as time, especially if you were there for a longer period of time. But I would put it on there and just say, this is the role that I had, and just know that, from the background check, they're only allowed to give that information.
What's a great way to answer, departing the company abruptly? So that's kind of where I'm navigating. There was differences there, but how do I navigate another company that I'm interviewing with, that this position, just ended abruptly because, personality differences? I'm not really sure how to answer it without downplaying the company or appearing that this was a problem caused by me.
Yeah, I would say that you either left for personal reasons, or you left for more career aspirations, things like that. I would not at all say anything negative about the company, or go into detail about it, because it's, as Kamala Harris and Waltz would say, it's nobody's business but your own.
Thank you.
Okay, Lita, you had a question?
I do. Good morning, and thanks again, Will, for hosting this career fair. My question is, I am in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and with everything, hey, everything now that's going on, and I'm trying to make a transition. So I would love to get advice from you in regards to, I'm looking at the HR route, pursuing that a little bit more broader from that perspective, but I have not had a pure HR role in my past career history. So I would love to get some feedback from you.
Sure, sure. Actually, I've had this conversation with a lot of young people. Well, first thing I try to say, stay in it. So that's the first thing. So if that's not the case, if you want to get into HR, what I would say a good entry point is employee relations. And when I mean entry, meaning entry into the field, not saying that you have to be right out of school or something like that, but you can parlay your skills and capabilities in diversity and inclusion into being a business partner, into employee relations, into especially learning and development, because all of these skills that we're learning, about reach one and teach one, that's great for learning and development. Talent acquisition, so recruiting and staffing, but also talent management, because you want to make sure that you're infusing equal opportunity for everyone, diversity and inclusion for everyone into talent management practices. And so being able to talk about what you do in that space around talent management is also a good place too. There's a lot of places for you to go in HR when it comes to diversity and inclusion in your background. A lot of the same skill sets.
Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome question from an awesome Hampton University grad there. Hey, so we're pretty much out of time. Unfortunately, I do see there's some more questions. So Celeste, I don't know if you are open to people reaching out to you on LinkedIn.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Please, please.
So if you want to reach out to Celeste, just look for Celeste Warren on LinkedIn, and Celeste is Vice President of Global Diversity and Inclusion at Merck. And then the other thing you can do is you can drop your questions in the chat, and then we'll share the chat with the Merck team after the event. Now, at 11 a.m., we'll have our next session, which is Breaking the Glass Ceiling with Your HBCU Degree by Joy Jackson Guilford, Director, Strategic Partnerships at AbbVie. But let me thank our speaker and presenter, Celeste Warren from Merck. Thank you again, Celeste, for taking the time out. I don't know if you have any closing words that you'd like to share before we close out the session.
Just one thing, Will. First of all, thank you, Will, for the invitation to be able to come and speak to everybody. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, especially speaking with students. I love it, love it, love it. And especially talking to all of you from HBCUs, whether you be alum or students. Best of luck in the job search and whatever your aspirations may be, internships, fellowships, trying to get into different schools, graduate schools. Best of luck to all of you. And I hope it was helpful, the discussion that we had.
Definitely helpful. And thank you again, Celeste. Appreciate it. So I'm going to drop the link to our next session in the chat. So if you want to jump on there early, I'm getting ready to jump over there as well. And again, our next session is Breaking the Glass Ceiling with Your HBCU Degree with Joy Jackson from AbbVie. All right, so I'm going to drop the link in the chat.
I don't see my chat.
Let's see. It's the Zoom chat.
Yeah.
Should be an option here within Zoom, but we'll also email it to you as well.
Okay.
How do you get into the career fair? I've been trying to get into the career fair.
Sure, just go to careerfair.hbcuconnect.com, and then at the top, there's a little button that says login. Click that button and enter your email address, and it should let you right in. If for some reason it doesn't let you in right away because it doesn't recognize your email, just use that registration form, fill that out, and then once you submit that, it should let you into the event.
Okay.
Careerfair.hbcuconnect.com. All right, I'll see you guys in the next session.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you.